Decoded.
Welcome back to Book Decoded, everybody. Today we're going to be taking a look at The Invisible Hand of AI by Alexis Ellis.
Yeah.
And this book really dives into the world of algorithms, and especially on social media, and how they shape what we see and do online. I mean, It feels like something we all experience, but rarely think about deeply.
Yeah, it's true. Most of us, I think, just scroll through our feeds without even realizing the complex machinery that's working behind the scenes. This book does a really great job of kind of pulling back the curtain and showing how AI has evolved from these simple tools to these really powerful systems that are curating like our digital realities.
Yeah, I think the book starts by talking about this rise of machine learning and deep learning, and I found it fascinating how it explains that these technologies allow algorithms to analyze massive amounts of data and practically predict our next move online, really tailor our experiences. I mean, it's kind of amazing and a little unnerving at the same time. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think it's a really powerful example of how AI is no longer just this futuristic concept. It's really integrated into our daily lives. As I mentioned, the book calls this the era of personalized feeds, where platforms like social media are gathering data about our preferences, our connections, and even our online habits to curate what we see.
It's almost like having a personal shopper for information, but one that knows way more about us than we realize.
Right.
The book even gives this example of how two people with similar interests like travel might see totally different content on their feeds based on subtle things they've clicked on in the past.
Wow.
That level of personalization is pretty incredible.
It is. It really highlights the power of these machine learning models like neural networks. These models are constantly analyzing our behavior and learning from it, and they're refining their predictions about what we'll find engaging. And the book explains that it goes even further, with algorithms being used to predict our future actions. For example, someone who's been researching home renovations online might start seeing ads for home improvement stores even if they haven't explicitly searched for them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So that's where I start to wonder about the potential downsides.
Yeah.
It's convenient to see things we're interested in, but when does that cross the line into feeling like we're constantly being watched and analyzed? The book delves into some of these concerns, right?
Absolutely. One of the biggest issues that the book raises is this impact on our privacy. We're essentially trading our personal data for these personalized experiences, and it's not always clear what we're giving up or how that data might be used in the future.
Yeah. The book mentions how extensive data collection is happening. They're gathering everything from our browsing history to our location data. It makes you think about the potential for misuse, especially as these algorithms become even more sophisticated.
And that's a key point that the book makes. It's not just about the data itself, but it's how it's being used. For example, algorithms can use this data to create incredibly detailed profiles of us, which can then be used for targeted advertising.
Yeah, targeted advertising is a tricky area. On one hand, seeing ads for things I'm actually interested in can be helpful, but there's this fine line between helpful and feeling like I'm being manipulated or constantly nudged towards certain products or services.
Right.
What's the book's take on this?
Well, the book dives into the mechanics of ad targeting, explaining how algorithms analyze our data to figure out what kinds of ads we're most likely to respond to. It highlights this use of predictive analytics, where historical data is used to anticipate our future actions. This can be as simple as showing someone ads for running shoes after they've been looking at fitness trackers.
Oh, so it's all about connecting the dots and using our past behavior to predict what we might want next. I can see how that's effective from a marketing perspective. But it does make you wonder about the potential for manipulation, especially if we're not fully aware how these systems are working.
Yeah, and that's where the book's exploration of the psychological impact of these technologies comes in. It argues that these personalized experiences, while seemingly beneficial, can also create this sense of being in a filter bubble, where we're only exposed to information that confirms our existing beliefs.
That's a really interesting point. It makes sense that if algorithms are constantly showing us things we already agree with, we might miss out on different perspectives and a broader understanding of the world. I'm curious to learn more about how the book explores that idea.
It definitely digs deeper into the relationship between algorithms and online truth, which is where things get even more fascinating. The book raises some serious questions about how algorithms influence the information we encounter online. It argues that while these systems are designed to, keep us engaged, that very goal can actually lead to the spread of misinformation and the amplification of existing biases.
Oh, wow. That's a bit concerning. I mean, we all know how quickly things can go viral online, even if they're not true. Does the book explain how that happens from like an algorithmic perspective?
It does. The invisible hand of AI points out that algorithms prioritize content that generates a lot of engagement. So, likes, shares, comments, regardless of whether that content is actually accurate. And unfortunately, studies have shown that misinformation often spreads faster and wider than factual information because it tends to be, more sensational or emotionally charged.
So it's almost like a vicious cycle. The more we engage with misinformation, even if it's just to argue with it, the more the algorithms think it's important and show it to even more people.
Exactly. And the book goes on to discuss this concept of algorithmic bias, which is the idea that the biases of the people who create these algorithms and the biases present in the data used to train them can end up being reflected in the content we see.
That makes sense. I guess even if an algorithm is trying to be objective, it can still end up showing us a skewed version of reality if the data it's working with is biased in some way. What are the implications of that?
Well, the book argues that algorithmic bias can have real-world consequences, especially when it comes to things like political campaigns or public health information, for example. If an algorithm is showing certain demographics primarily negative news stories about a particular political candidate, that could unfairly influence their voting decisions.
It seems like this could also lead to the echo chambers we were talking about earlier, where people are only exposed to information that confirms their existing beliefs, further dividing us as a society.
Precisely, the book delves into the potential consequences of echo chambers, suggesting they can make it harder for people to engage in productive conversations and make informed decisions.
This all paints a somewhat bleak picture. Is there anything we can do as individuals to navigate this complex algorithmic landscape?
Absolutely. While the book highlights the challenges, it also emphasizes the importance of user awareness and agency. It encourages readers to be more critical of the content they consume, to diversify their feeds by actively seeking out different perspectives, and to be aware of the tactics that platforms use to keep them engaged.
So it's about being more mindful and proactive in how we use social media, rather than passively consuming whatever is presented to us.
Exactly. It's about reclaiming some of that control and making more conscious choices about how we spend our time and attention online.
The book also talks about the power dynamics at play, right? Like
Yeah.
who controls these algorithms and how transparent are they about their decision-making processes.
That's another crucial aspect the book explores. While social media companies obviously have a lot of power, the book emphasizes that it's not a simple black and white situation. It highlights the role of data scientists, policymakers, and even users themselves in shaping this digital landscape.
So it's a complex ecosystem with many stakeholders involved.
Yeah,
And as users, we have a responsibility to be informed and engaged in these conversations.
absolutely. The book advocates for greater transparency and accountability from social media companies. It argues that we need more control over our data and algorithms that are designed with fairness and ethical considerations in mind.
This brings up another point. The book makes this whole idea of the economics of algorithmic attention, essentially how these platforms make money by keeping us hooked. I'd love to hear more about that.
It's a fascinating aspect of the book, The Invisible Hand of AI, really dissects the business model of social media, explaining how engagement is the key metric and how algorithms are constantly tweaked to maximize the amount of time we spend scrolling and clicking.
It's kind of like a slot machine, right? We keep scrolling, hoping for that next hit of dopamine from a funny video or an interesting article.
That's a great analogy. And the book goes even further, exploring the psychological mechanisms at play and how some of these strategies can be manipulative, playing on our fear of missing out or our need for social validation to keep us hooked.
It really highlights the need for awareness. Understanding how these platforms are designed to capture and hold our attention is crucial for making more informed choices about our online behavior. What are some of the specific strategies the book discusses?
It covers quite a few, but some of the most common tactics include things like push notifications, infinite scrolling, and personalized recommendations that are designed to keep us constantly engaged.
These are all things we experience every day, but I've never really stopped to think about the psychology behind them. It's a bit unsettling, but also empowering to be aware of these tactics.
Exactly. And the book emphasizes that understanding these systems is the first step towards taking control of our online experience.
So where do we go from here? The book offers some practical advice, right?
It does. It encourages users to become more digitally literate, meaning understanding not just how to use these platforms, but also how they work and how they're trying to influence us. For example, being aware of the tactics we've discussed, diversifying our feeds, and fact-checking information before we share it are all good starting points.
It sounds like the book is advocating for a more mindful and proactive approach to social media. Instead of being passive consumers, We need to become active participants who are aware of the forces at play and make conscious choices about how we engage with these platforms.
That's a great way to sum it up. It's about empowering ourselves to have a healthier and more balanced relationship with technology.
It's definitely been eye-opening to explore these ideas. I feel like I've learned a lot about how algorithms are shaping our online experiences, both in positive and potentially concerning ways.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's important to have these conversations and encourage critical thinking about our relationship with technology.
Yeah, for sure. The book also touches on the legal and ethical challenges surrounding AI, right?
Yeah.
I imagine it's such a rapidly evolving field. It's hard to keep up with all the implications.
You're absolutely right. The invisible hand of AI dedicates a significant portion to discussing the challenges of regulating AI, and it highlights these difficulties in establishing clear guidelines and accountability, especially when we're dealing with these complex algorithms that are constantly learning and evolving.
Yeah, it seems like there's this constant tension between innovation and regulation.
Yeah.
We want to encourage technological advancement, but we also need safeguards in place to protect individuals and society as a whole.
Exactly. The book argues for the development of ethical frameworks for AI design, advocating for principles like fairness, transparency, and accountability.
Yeah, I think that's crucial. We need to ensure that these powerful technologies are being developed and used responsibly with a focus on human well-being and societal benefit.
I completely agree. The book emphasizes that the future of AI is not predetermined. It's something we're actively shaping through our choices and actions, both as individuals and as a society.
That's a powerful message. It can feel overwhelming to think about the scale and complexity of these issues, but ultimately we have a role to play in shaping a future where technology serves humanity in a positive and ethical way.
Absolutely. By becoming more aware of how these systems work and engaging in thoughtful discussions about their impact, we can contribute to a more informed and responsible use of AI.
Well, this has been a fascinating deep dive into the invisible hand of AI. I feel like I have a much better understanding of the invisible forces shaping our digital lives, and I'm definitely going to be thinking more critically about my own online behavior.
I'm glad to hear that. It's been a pleasure discussing these ideas with you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. And to our listeners, if you're looking for a thought-provoking and insightful exploration of the world of AI and its impact on our lives, I highly recommend checking out The Invisible Hand of AI by Alexis Ellis.
It's definitely a must-read for anyone who wants to understand the forces shaping our digital world.
That's it for this episode of Book Decoded. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into a fascinating book.